So to kind of like wrap it up with like the TikTok ban, right? So one thing that I brought up in the beginning was all these people that were going to lose their jobs, right? What if instead, because this is what I've been thinking, because I make money on TikTok myself, right? So what if instead you go, what's the opportunity? And this is literally what I tell myself. So I'm not even worried about TikTok. If it went away, who fucking cares? Like, it doesn't matter, because what is the possibility that could come along that I don't even know that's there
Yeah.
if TikTok goes away? Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today we're going to jump into the looming issue of the TikTok ban that is literally has not been decided. We don't know the fate of TikTok here in the United States, but there's more questions that I have about this too, of like, if this happens in the United States, can it happen in other places? And I truly think that that is a huge possibility. And I think we're just going to go crazy with this one. So, friends, if we haven't talked, my name is Karen.
And my name is Ashley. And yeah, I find it interesting and definitely 1,000 directions we could go with this one, as always.
Yeah. So, but I mean, let's just talk about the fact that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that make money on TikTok, right? Like they have their livelihood on TikTok, and that is the social media platform that gave them their big break, right? That is the social media platform that just worked for them, right? They've tried all these other things and they had the most success on TikTok. And the fact that that can rip away millions of people's income overnight is kind of a huge thing. Like, I feel like that is something to definitely talk about too, because it's like all of these people that have their livelihood in a certain place, they could literally just lose it overnight. And that's just talking about the creators. What about the people here in the United States that work on TikTok? All of those people will lose their jobs overnight too. And so there's like a huge economical issue with this too, but also like the whole freedom of speech thing, which is like the big thing that they're talking about. The lawyer that was fighting for TikTok was like, hey, like this is infringing upon freedom of speech, right? We we can't make this precedent, because once we cross that line, where does it end? And I think like we were talking about this before, when we were like, well, what are we going to talk about today? And Ashley, you were talking about how a lot of freedoms of speech on social media in Canada are already infringed upon. And so, like, that's my big question. Like, where does it end? Where does it stop? Right? Like, if we go down this road, where does the end happen? And so this is, yeah, fascinating.
Well, and like for me, like I'm obviously not American. I just can't see how like well, I guess Trump isn't technically president yet, but you would think that he could put a stop to it in some degree for TikTok. Maybe that's why I don't know.
Well, because he is not currently the president, he becomes the president on January 20th, and the
Mhm.
ban becomes in effect on January 19th. There's literally nothing that he can do at this moment until he gets into office. So,
And what a coincidence of that, even.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I was watching a TikTok yesterday too about how there was a guy that was trying to make like a identity like kind of like robot where essentially it would track all of your personal information and data over your entire life. And it got shut down because it was invading people's privacy to be tracking everything about their identity. And then there's a photo taken of him and Mark Zuckerberg back before Facebook was a thing. And so it was
Yeah.
the guy that was doing this software that he then lost all of his funding and the government was like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. It's invading people's privacy. And then all of a sudden Facebook blows up.
Yep.
And I'm just like, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Hmm.
And then TikTok comes out. And right as Facebook is getting tons of backlash for their fact checking around COVID, and then TikTok becomes this big, huge thing, and now they're trying to ban it. And I'm just like, I truly believe that this is spiritual warfare, and there's big players behind all of this. And It was right after we had like a big trucker protest in Canada that Trudeau eliminated any news to be able to be seen or shared on social media. And there's the timing of that was interesting too, because right after we didn't have, I don't remember there ever being anything conversation wise that I was aware of. Like no one ever talked about how, oh, pretty soon we won't be able to share the news on social media platforms. And like even access, like I live in Kelowna, like I can't even access local Kelowna news on social media at all.
Mm.
And you can
Mhm.
go on to local Canadian
Mhm.
Kelowna news and you can see it, but I can't.
Mhm.
And right after that, we had huge fires, and not being able to see the news on social media was very debilitating in a lot of ways. It eliminated how we were able to know who was evacuating and who was on alert and everything like that because it was weeks apart. And all of a sudden, we just heard, oh, by the way, you can't do this anymore. As
Mhm.
of this date, you're not going to be able to do this. And that
Yeah,
was,
I also think it's interesting too that TikTok is excluded from that because you showed me before because I was really, really curious whenever you were like, oh yeah, no, I can't. And you've said this before, like this isn't new to me that your news was excluded from social media, but I didn't realize that it was Facebook, Instagram, you can't get to news, but on TikTok, you can. Because I even asked you, well, what if you type in like California wildfires on TikTok? And you were like, oh no, I can see everything. So
yeah, weird.
that's what makes me beg the question of if TikTok is banned in the United States, does that mean that Canada is next? Like, that's my big question.
Yeah.
Probably, exactly. Because TikTok, there is so much there because of the way the algorithm works, there's a lot more freedom to it. And I think personally, like if we went down this conspiracy, like I think personally that is one of the biggest reasons that, as you said, there's some people that don't want us to know certain things. And so, because of the freedom of finding things on TikTok, the question is that one of the biggest reasons that they want or somebody wants to shut it down? I mean, if I wanted to, I could go on TikTok and I could find across the world their news, right? I could go find Chinese news if I wanted to. Like, yeah, I don't speak Chinese, so it'd be hard to understand what was going on. So that's a big barrier, but I can still find it, right? So I think that the fact that platform is one of the most open ones is probably one of the biggest reasons that there's so much negative towards it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, well, and even when my cousin was in the Olympics this last summer, I couldn't find a video of him diving anywhere because it was technically news.
That's
So if
terrible.
I wanted to go rewatch it and share it with people that didn't stay up into the night to watch his dive, and I couldn't. I couldn't find it on YouTube. I couldn't find it on Facebook. I couldn't find it on Instagram. He won a medal. It was nowhere. Like
Mm,
it should have been something that would be easy to find, you know?
mhm,
And so it's just weird. And I remember growing up being slightly fascinated as a teenager in North Korea and being like, wow, like everything's censored and like they only have access to their country stuff and the government controls everything that they're allowed to watch. And it's like, huh, it's really the same for us too. Like, even if you look at like the TV shows and the movies, like I truly believe we're being brainwashed, we're being conditioned.
mhm,
Um, and either there's Easter eggs to help us wake up, or they're making fun of us. Because there's
mhm,
a lot, like I think we talked about on a podcast before, where there's a lot of things that are like intriguing about like Jurassic Park or
mm.
Twister or whatever movie. And it's like, are they trying to help us wake up, or are they making fun of us for being so asleep and putting it right in front of our eyes? So, yeah.
I mean, some of it too, because you also have to remember, like, a lot of the people in Hollywood are very creative. Like, that's the reason they're doing film. They're very creative. And I think that when you're a really creative person, you're in tune with just a different frequency. You're
Yeah.
not focused on the regular mundane things of life. You're into a lot of times like the spiritual world, the multidimensional world, the like I don't want to just talk about what people do day in, day out. That's not interesting. Nobody's going to watch that. And so
Yeah.
they really have to tune into a different frequency. And so I think what happens a lot of times is people will tune into frequencies of such creative level that it's like, oh, wait, did that come from my brain or did that come from another dimension? And I think a lot of it does have to do with that as well, where there are some people that are awake and yeah, maybe they're making fun. Who fucking cares though? But at the same time, like, there's a lot of really creative people in Hollywood and some of their brains are just on another level and they're connected to a different frequency and so they're able to come up with these things. So
Yeah.
that's another topic.
Yeah. Like this literally leads into so many different places. So yeah, it's interesting. And it is like it is hard because even like on TikTok, you see people using code words and that kind of stuff. And it really is too bad that we live in a world that is so censored, you know?
Mm,
Um, and I get it, like there's things that are inappropriate, but like that whole like thing on TikTok about the whole drones and now they're
mm,
being called Dior bags so they don't get blocked. You
mm,
know, it's just like why? Like why can't we talk about drones without getting blocked? You know, I can understand if you have a video of someone like being too scandalous or being killed or being bullied, like that makes sense to me, but like why can't we talk about weird topics, you know?
hmm Yeah, I
So,
mean, at the end of the day, I do understand needing to draw the line because I do remember I wasn't never on TikTok when it first launched, but I know people that were and they were like some of the things on your FYP were really scary. Like scary in the fact that you would be basically watching porn, right?
mhm.
So like I do understand that because I'm sorry, I don't want to just be scrolling my FYP and seeing some ladies hoo-ha. I'm just
Yeah,
not interested in that. And I like listen, I'm in healthcare. I see that shit all the time, right? Like that doesn't really bother me, but on social media, I don't really want to see somebody else's creativity around it, you know? So, but yeah, so it's there's such a fine line in life of what is actually censorship and what is like we really do want to protect people. And I do truly think that there are, and everybody, when I say this, you're going to be like, well, duh, Karen, there's truly good people in this world and there's truly not so good people, right? There's truly people that want to keep you in the dark and not realize that you're a multidimensional being living a multidimensional life. There are truly people that want you to think that you're just a body sack, basically. And then there's people that are like, oh man, there's so much more to life. And they
yeah,
want to help create something more for humanity. So I really think like that we're at an interesting crossroads right now because you can feel the tension between the two sides. I think
100%.
that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, in Hollywood, whenever there's people that are talking about like our true dimensional beings, like how we are not just physical, like Jim Carrey. I know that's someone that we should probably have just a podcast alone about.
Yeah.
He's labeled as a lunatic.
Yeah.
And so literally Hollywood has labeled him as crazy. And it's very intriguing because of who he was in society in Hollywood and now who he is. But yeah, so there
But
definitely is forces keeping it down.
yeah, but at the same time, you really like someone like Jim Carrey is so influential. Like
Mhm.
he is so influential. And there are so many people that still love him and are like, no, I don't think he's crazy. I think that he's onto something. You know, I think that at a certain point you can't shut people up. At a
Yeah.
certain point, like you can't keep covering that light because the light will seep out somehow. You know, so I do think that I mean, you can feel it right now because I personally can feel the energy shift, the energy frequency changes in our world. And I do think that the more that that happens, the more that it's just going to snuff out a lot of this darkness where people want to keep us not in the know of who we really are and want us to think that we're just a body sack, that we live, we die, the end. Like there's so much more to it. So
Yeah. Well, in that one interview that went the most viral that I've seen of Jim Carrey being like criticized, like he's talking and the interviewer is like rolling her eyes back at the cameraman
mm,
while he's talking. And I'm just like, it's so interesting because I'm seeing her reaction to him. And I'm sitting here being like, everything he says just makes perfect sense.
yeah,
And you look crazy for rolling your eyes at this and being judgmental and being rude. Like she was rude to him. But because he was saying something that wasn't socially acceptable, she felt like she could treat him that way. So
yeah.
it's just interesting. But like everything he said to me seemed completely logical and not crazy at all.
Yeah. Yeah, this kind of reminds me. So I'm constantly on calls with Dr. Joe because I am a part of his Inner Health Coalition. I'm doing his training to become a trainer for him. Like there's a lot of stuff where I can connect with him. And there was a question that somebody asked him recently that just got me thinking. Um, they asked him because they were telling their coworkers about him, basically. Like this guy was like, I'm so excited about what meditation has done for me. I've literally changed my life 180, right? Like I've healed myself, I've done blah blah blah, all these things just from following what Dr. Joe has to say, right? So he was telling his coworkers about it, and he was like, I would love it, guys, if you would do, it's called a 5 minute heart lock in, right? And it's literally just like you're spending time on your heart and there's music that you can play, right? But you're just literally putting energy on your heart while with your eyes closed. That's basically what a heart lock in is, right? And it's only 5 minutes. And so he was like, I'd love it if you guys did this with me. And so his coworkers did, and all of them said that was the worst experience of my life. And this man was gutted. He was devastated. He was like, oh my God, like, how can you not get it? Like, how do you not understand that this is so good? And how could you not feel what just happened right now? Right. So he asked Dr. Joe, he was like, how do you deal with all of the negative rejection? How do you do it? Because it's not even my work. It's me defending you, right? I know. And he's like, I know that you have like 10 million times more of this. Like, what do you do with it? And Dr. Joe was like, it's actually really simple. I just don't care what people think about me anymore because I know the truth. I know that this is true. I cannot, because he does a lot of research, a lot of data on meditation, a lot of other things too, but meditation's the big one, right? So, but I can't not believe it anymore because the data is telling me that it's true. So I can't not believe it. And I just don't care what people have to say about it. It doesn't matter to me. And I think the more that all of us get this level of, I just don't care what people think about me. It reminds me of Jim Carrey. Like he still talks about this stuff because he doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him because what matters to him more is the changing of humanity in the positive instead of us going backwards, right? So for people that are influential, I think it's really just not just influential people, but all of us to get to a point where we're like, no, this is my truth and I just don't care what you think. It doesn't matter to me because this is my truth. This is just
Yeah.
the way it is.
Yeah. And I think that that is what happened with COVID. And I think it was the exact opposite of what they wanted to happen. I think with COVID, they wanted us to comply. And
Mm,
then they realized some definitely did, others definitely did not. Like your situation, for example, was where your hospital tried to put on these conditions and then they couldn't because no one was going to comply to them. Whereas here in Canada, we had vaccine passports throughout our whole country and everything like that. So we complied a lot more. But um, anyway, so people did wake up. Like, so I'm a lot more of the typical conspiracy theorist have been forever. Like, I was obsessed with North Korea as a teenager because, like, I've always kind of had those tendencies. My mom, not so much. And she used to really ride me for being anti-vax and all those kind of things. Now she is. And COVID is what really woke her up. So I think we did have a lot of people that got pushed to a breaking point that did wake up and did decide to do their own research. And when you do your own research and start to take like that independence of like, I'm not just going to let doctors and governments and whatever tell me what is what, I'm going to actually dive into this, you become a conspiracy theorist, like you realize what the truth is, you realize you're not being told it, and you have to stop caring what people think. And so this kind of this analogy, I was going to kind of bring it back to the whole like Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni thing that's going on social media too.
I don't
Um,
know what this is. You mentioned this before, and I'm like, I literally live under a rock. So, guys, laugh at me if you want to, but I barely know who Blake Lively is. Like, I know who she is, but I don't know who that other person is at all. Like, this is as far as it goes.
you ever watched Jane the Virgin?
Nope,
'Cause that's where he kind
never
of got,
seen.
that's what I know him from.
Okay.
Guys, they filmed this like popular book by Colleen Hoover, I think her name is. I don't know. If I might have butchered that too. I don't think that actually is. That's a different author, I think. But anyways, doesn't matter. So he directed and produced this movie and was the lead role in it, the dude. And then Blake was the lead female role. And he made it so that part of the charity or part of the proceeds of the movie, like what they made, had to go to charity. He was very much an advocate of that. Whenever he talked about the movie, he talked about like how amazing everything was and how he wanted this message out there. Um, and then she talked about her other companies that she was doing at the same time. And anytime people asked her about DV, she like joked about it and like kind of thing. And she got like social media has destroyed her these last 6 months because they started bringing out all these old interviews where she's a bitch. And she's kind of a typical spoiled brat because her parents were famous, and then she kind of just got into it, even though she admittedly that said that she didn't have talent, but her parents paid her into lead roles. And um, so anyway, so then she started getting all this bad press. I personally think it's because of how poorly she handled the DV conversations around a movie that was supposed to be empowering for women that have gone through DV. And so then she sued Justin Baldoni and said that he was the one that gave her all this bad press. And then now he's countersuing her. And everyone that you talk to, it's like there's two sides to the story. And um you have to do the research. You have to not care what other people are thinking. You have to do the research. And so it's this big, huge thing, and everyone's picking sides. And everything that I see on my personal TikTok is about how, like, she's doing this because she cares what people think and she cares about her image. And he's doing this because he just wanted to shed light on DV and all that kind of stuff. And this is who he is as a character, and he doesn't care what people think about him. And so it just kind of fits into that, and it's a little bit of a TikTok relevant thing because it's all over TikTok. But it all just comes down to we need freedom of speech and we need to do our own research.
Mhm.
Like, so yeah.
Yeah, I think too when you just talk about do your own research, the important thing is to cross research. Okay. So the first news source that you go to is not always right. Right. So for me, before I make any kind of assumption or opinion about something, I look at a lot of things because propaganda is real, right? Like that's why I really love, I always say this, but that's why I really love Dr. Joe because he literally is doing his own research. He's like, I don't really like, I could believe what other people say, or I could just research what the community, his community of people that are coming to his events, what are they doing? Like, what is happening that's creating these miraculous experiences? I want to know that. And so I'm going to do my own research on it instead of asking Facebook or Google, what does meditation do for you? Right? Like he wanted to do that on his own. So I do think that like there's a level of asking yourself, is this research that I'm doing, is it really good? Or is this just me going down a rabbit hole because I feel a certain way? This is something I really look at in myself. Am I doing or saying something because I feel a certain way? And so I want to keep this frequency of what I'm currently feeling? Or am I doing this because I want to actually know the truth? And a lot of times we cannot find the truth if we're at a certain level of awareness. So if I'm sitting in a level of awareness of anger, I'm going to find things that are in the same level of awareness as anger. There's no way I can get to love because I'm staying in a frequency of anger. And instead of like finding love, I'm going to just keep finding more anger. So that's something that's really important too. When you are doing research, what is your frequency? What are you thinking and feeling more importantly?
Mhm.
Because you're going to continue to find the information on your current level of awareness. And what I say by a level of awareness is if you're feeling a certain way, you're going to find the same things on those levels. One thing that really hit me whenever I'm in currently, as I said, the training process for being a trainer for Dr. Joe, is that if you want to find possibility, you've got to increase your frequency to one that's more positive. So, for example, if you are looking for an answer to a question, if you're in a certain frequency, say you're like, I want the answer to XYZ. If you're now thinking on the same level of that, you can't find the answer. But if you get into a level of positivity, you can find the answer. So one thing that they ask you to do whenever you're going through his training is um, what question, like what do you want to change in your life? What is the thing that you want to change? Now the first thing that you want to focus on is a positive feeling towards that. Why? Because positivity is going to open you up to a new level of awareness. You're going to get more possibilities from that positivity instead of staying on this level of, well, this was my past experience. My past experience wasn't very good, and so my future experience is probably going to be the same. You can't create something new in that level of awareness. You have to get to a positive, what's a possibility? And the way to do that is to get to a positive thought or feeling.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And that's the hard thing in life is
Yeah.
rewiring that and changing that. And so much is influenced by our environment and everything like that. It's definitely easier said than done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not sitting here going, oh, I'm so good at this. Not at all. Because it's a process. Like I find myself catching myself throughout the day going, oop, I went back to my old self and my old self said that I can't do this. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a never ending process of getting uncomfortable
Mhm.
with being honest with yourself, right? Being so incredibly honest with yourself and to the point that you're uncomfortable about it, where you're like, ooh, I do that. That's
Yeah.
ugly. I don't want to keep doing that. So,
Well, and it's such a hard thing to not let your feelings take over. Like even just today, I stubbed my toe. And I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, and like you just like it's like the worst. Like I don't know how to like not like verbally like scream out in pain when it happens. And what went through my mind is like, seriously, like how can it like control me like this? Like
Mm,
how can it literally cause this much of a reaction, me just stubbing my toe? Like it's not actually that bad. Like I in 5 minutes, once this like agonize or not 5 minutes, 5 seconds, it's gone.
hmm Well,
But
that's important too. I don't think there's anything wrong with reacting. Zero
yeah,
problem with reacting. I don't see
well,
any problem with that because your body is going to create certain chemicals when something happens to us. Your body creates chemicals according to what happened in the past because that's how your brain is wired. The question is, how long do I want to feel like this? So if you stubbed your toe and then for the rest of like 2 weeks, you were like, oh my God, I can barely walk. Like that is when you have literally lingered on, right? That's where your refractory period gets longer and longer and longer. And now this starts to create who you are, right? So,
yeah, I agree and disagree. And I know you do think the same way I do too, because we've talked about this enough, but like there also is that we get addicted to the reaction.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so if we aren't getting a reaction from the normal, like our brain always wants the normal, and if we don't get a reaction from that, we're going to then just put that reaction out there in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that if we can tone down our reactions,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's like just move it down a little bit,
That's
and
your
then
refractory period. Yep.
yeah, and not just the time of it, but also like
The
the
length.
yeah, and we've
Yep.
talked about this before where like my partner's ex is abusive to my children. And so how I react, I have to tone it down. Like I want to be a mama bear
Right.
and go at it, you know? And I have to tone it down and tone it down and be like, okay, that my kids aren't dying. They're learning, like all this kind of stuff. They're not getting beat to a pulp. But they are in an unsafe environment, but they're not getting beat to a pulp, you know? Um, and so I have to move myself down so that I'm not getting addicted to that high stress chemical release. Um, it's actually like for kids, you'll see this a lot where they'll make up really weird things
Yep.
because they need that reaction. They need
Right.
that attention. They need that normal. There's a kid that goes to my kid's school and his sister died when he was in grade one. And we definitely bubble wrapped him and let him get away with a lot of stuff. And now we're paying the consequences of that. And yesterday he was laying on the ground and he's like, yeah, I went to the hospital yesterday and I have a heart condition. And if I fall over, I have to stay laying on the ground for my heart to catch up.
Mm.
And I was just like, okay. And so he needs that same level of attention
Right.
as he got when his sister passed away.
Right.
And he's addicted to that. So he's trying to create other situations, like he has a heart
Right.
condition, that give him that same response.
Right.
And so he laid there telling all of his friends about it, that circled him and were asking if he was okay and if he needed help. And he just explained to them how he went to the hospital yesterday and how he has a heart condition and he just has to do this. This is what the doctor said, you know? And it sounds silly, but we do the exact same thing as adults.
Right. No, absolutely. And so, like, I kind of want to go back down the refractory period because this is really, really important, I think. So, as I said, there's nothing wrong with reacting, but how long do we want to react, right? So, I said that already, but the length of time, and this has actually been studied, this isn't something I'm making up, okay? The length of time that we have a thought and the chemical hits our bloodstream, and the length of time that that chemical is in our bloodstream is about 90 seconds. Okay. So something happens to you, you stub your toe, ow. Okay. Right. Like the length of time that that chemical hits your bloodstream and then goes out of your bloodstream is 90 seconds. Okay. If you want to read about this, read the book 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. Such a great book with this. So, but that 90 seconds, the question is after 90 seconds, after a minute and a half. Now, I'm not talking about deep grief and trauma. This is a totally different story. So don't get mad at me, guys, if you're like, but I'm in deep grief and trauma. Somebody like maybe passed away in your life or whatever. That is a different story. But I'm talking about what you were just talking about, Ashley, where it was like, something happens and how long do I want to keep this story going? So that kid that laid on the ground for longer than 90 seconds and didn't go, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Do I really want to believe what that doctor had to say to me? Do I really want to create this in my life? Like the kid probably does not have that kind of self-awareness yet, right? But as an adult, we can always ask ourselves, how long do I want to feel this way? And if we let it linger, that refractory period gets longer and longer and longer until finally this is now our personality. And now we just want to tell a story that makes us feel a certain way because our body's craving that emotion. And so if we can teach ourselves how to shorten that refractory period, as you said, shorten the amount of time between an experience and how long we feel about an experience, about like this like negative feeling of experience, this limited emotion of like anger or frustration or overwhelm or whatever you want to put in there, that limited emotion. How long do we want to feel that way? When we can shorten that, that's when we create freedom. That is literally, in my opinion, the definition of freedom, because now we've freed ourselves from that old feeling. And now we've created a whole new possibility in our life, because now we're not focusing on that person or that place or that thing that caused us to feel a certain way or think a certain way, right? And so when we can shorten that, that's when we create freedom in our life, right? And I do know people that literally will look you dead in the face and they'll go, if I react to you right now, I'm going to get out of this Zen feeling that I'm feeling right now. And I don't really want to do that. So I'm just going to live in my happy bubble. Right. And so that's the person that has become so self-aware that they don't want to step into a limited emotion of anger, frustration, overwhelm. Right. They've become so self-aware. And so their refractory period is like instant. I don't even want to do that. Right. And so yes, 100%. Can you get that to that place? Yes. Is it a process? For me, it is. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but it is a process of really being honest with yourself over and over and over again about how you're thinking and how you're feeling. And am I continuing to think and feel a certain way because I'm craving a certain emotion in my life?
Yeah. And I think so many of us do crave that like poor me feeling. And every time you experience that, you give your power away.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. And it's really hard to be like, no, I'm going to create my own narrative around this, and I'm going to choose how to be in control of this and not give
Yes.
that power away.
Yeah. So to kind of like wrap it up with like the TikTok ban, right? So one thing that I brought up in the beginning was all these people that were going to lose their jobs, right? What if instead, because this is what I've been thinking, because I make money on TikTok myself, right? So what if instead you go, what's the opportunity? And this is literally what I tell myself. So I'm not even worried about TikTok. If it went away, who fucking cares? Like, it doesn't matter, because what is the possibility that could come along that I don't even know that's there
Yeah.
if TikTok goes away? And that's what I keep telling myself over and over again. And so I don't even like, there's literally not a second thought about what could happen if TikTok's not in my life anymore. Because I don't
Yeah.
care, because I know that I can create so much more than what I
Mhm.
already have. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, with that, guys, I think we're going to call TMI advice you didn't want to wrap. This conversation didn't go the way that I expected, but it was so good. So, so friends, if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like, subscribe. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Maybe we pissed you off, or maybe you going, yeah, that's true, right? So let us know. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, go ahead, give us a 5-star. Let us know in the comments again what your thoughts are. But with that, we're going to call TMI advice you didn't want a wrap for today. See everyone next time. Thanks so much for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue hanging out with us, and don't forget to subscribe.